Hi, Gryoger here on a side quest from our Let's Play solo series. In the side quest, I want to talk about the encounter building rules primarily for 5e. Unfortunately, the 5e encounter building rules are not very good, which means it's hard to build your own encounter tables, and most of the encounter tables available are actually built on the encounter building rules, so they don't work very well. Otherwise, I just tell you guys to go use the Kobold Fight Club, the online encounter builder. But the problem is, it does use the official 5e rules for building monster encounters. So let me talk about the theory first, and then I'll show you how to build your own encounters. So it all starts with challenge rating, and when this hasn't changed for any edition, right? Except fourth, actually. Fourth did things differently, and in a good way. For once, fourth actually not only had a good idea, they even implemented it well, but that's not important to our particular discussion. So you see it goes from CR0 with some fractions up to about 30, usually 30, yeah. So what does this mean? A CR1, let's start from the beginning, a CR1 direwolf is supposed to be a challenge for 4 first level PCs. In other words, a party size of 4 is supposed to be a good matchup versus a CR1. Okay? That's the theory. Now, in practice, it's sometimes different, but that's the theory. So, if that's true, that should mean that 4 CR1 quarters should also be a good encounter for a first level party. And why did I pick 4? It turns out that the best encounters are 1 monster for each PC. And usually, to figure out what the CR should be, if you divide your party level by 4, that should loosely give you a pretty good value for what each individual PC should be facing off against. Okay? So that means 4 goblins, right, should be a good encounter versus, where are my goblins? There they are, Goblin Warrior. 4 of these should be a good encounter. All right. It also turns out because 4 times 1 quarter equals 1, right, for a first level party. And just like the halves, 2 1/2 should also be a good encounter. The 2 black bears versus our first level party. And when that takes us to the 1/8, this means 8 bandits should be a good encounter. And that's totally wrong. They'll probably TPK them. And in fact, I was doing a play test and I ended up with 7 bandits against my 4-man party and they TPK'd them. Why? It's something called the action economy. When the monsters have more attacks than the party, you run into trouble, particularly at first level. So this is what the action economy means. How many actions, in this case for encounters, we're talking about attacks, can the monsters make versus the party? And first level parties are so fragile that they can't handle more incoming attacks than they can put out. It's often very fatal to them. At least you'll have people die, or if not, have a TPK. So this is where the monster rules go wrong. They knew from their playtest there was something wrong, so they did things to try to mitigate this. What I'm telling you, what you should do for first level parties is if you cap the number of monsters appearing to the number of PCs, then you'll work. It'll be fine. So this means instead of doing 8 1/8, do 4. Notice how that the goblins are 1/4 tend to work. You also need to take a look at, there's a difference between bandits and things with special abilities. These kobolds with pack tactics are far tougher because they have advantage. They're going to hit even more than these bandits. All right, so that's kind of the basics. So the basic CR means divide by 4, and that's the CR of the monster. You want 1 versus 1. However, for first level, do not have more monsters than PCs. So let's talk about the second level. I'm going to follow this a little bit. First and second are a little bit special. A second takes full advantages of all these fractional CRs. So once again, our 1 CR, this Allosaurus, is supposed to be a good encounter for our 4-man second level party. And 2 first level, by math, are supposed to be a good encounter for our second level party. Notice once again, we get into differences of monsters, though. Not all CRs are the same. There's a big difference between this brown bear and, well, the copper dragon wormling, nothing else, or the ghoul. Anything, you got to watch your special attacks. And finally, let's talk about, let me bring this over here because I've already done all the tables. So talking about our second level party of 4. So we've got our sweet spot where we have 1 monster per PC is 1/2 CR monsters. We can have 2 1 CR monsters. We could have 1 CR2 monster. But what about, now that we know about action economy, what about 8 CR 1/4? Second level parties are a lot tougher, but they aren't exactly twice as tough as first level. I would be cautious. And normally, good encounters are about 4 to 6 monsters for a party of 4. All right, so yeah, they probably wouldn't die, but they'd probably be super messed up by 8 monsters. Now, magic happens at third for a couple reasons. First, the math gets wonky. And second, they get a lot tougher. So let's talk about some of this wonky math first, and then we'll talk about their overall toughness. All right, so we're still following this CR 1 CR3 as a good encounter, but we want our sweet spot monsters. How do we, so CR3 divided by 4 PCs, that gives us a CR 3/4. And in fact, for every odd party level, you're going to have the same problem. So what do you do? Well, people did various stuff. One of the best solutions that I saw, that I've seen, and the one that I actually use, is the one by Matt Colville when he did his Flea Mortals monster book. And let me show you what he did. So here, what he did was he did just like me. He did 3/4. And if you read through all this stuff, which I'll help you, basically what this means is you want to build an encounter of either halves, right? Because that's the next CR size down from 3/4 is 1/2, or ones, which is the next one up from 3/4, right? Because 3/4 is between 1/2 and ones, and 1/2 are the CRs that are available for us. So what this is telling us that 6 CR 1/2, because 6 times 1/2 equals 3, right? Our challenge rating. And 3 times 1 is also equal to 3, is how we build our encounters for third level. Now, what you can also do is mix them. You can have 2 CR1s plus 2 CR1 halves, because 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 1 half is 1, so 1 plus 2 equals 3, so this will work too. So you can mix and match. What were we trying to do? Not go over 3, right? When we add all our CRs up together of all the monsters we're trying to build in the encounter. All right, now this was okay. And what he did that I found innovative is he continues this strategy higher, but he limits it to halves. And I pretty much use this system all the way up to 20th level. So I'm going to tell you his stuff works. And once again, what you do when you got something like a half here is you go, okay, CR1s, right, which is below, and CR2s. So for 5th level, by my math, right, I want a good encounter. 5 divided by 4, right? Slightly higher than 1. Notice that there's been PC inflation, power inflation for a long time. And so what his tables do is start taking into account of some of that. So, because he's saying that for a standard encounter, it's not slightly over, he's saying it's 1.5. So for each of my 5th level PCs, I want to have 1.5 CRs. So for a 4-man party, I want either the low end would be 5 CR1s, or I could use 2, 4. I could use 2 CR2s. So, and then you can mix and match to get it much closer. Now that I've shown you, see, that's kind of awkward though, right? We only got 2 monsters, or we have 5. That still works, but yeah, which takes us to encounter difficulty rocking. So let me wrap up. This is basically how you use CRs in a nutshell. You can find a CR, find a level of your party, divide it by 4. That'll give you the expected CR of what one monster for each PC should be. You need to take a look though. Don't just blindly do it, because not all monsters of the same CR are not all the same. There's a lot of slop for a couple reasons. One, they're just not all the same. Some are much easier and some are much harder. In particular, there are a set of monsters called solo monsters, and those are meant to take on the entire party. A good example of those are dragons. A dragon is much tougher than a normal CR5. So there's a lot of slop in this system. So when you need to pay, when you're building your tables, pay careful attention to special attacks. Those CR18 kobolds with pack tactics are a lot more dangerous than those CR1/4 goblins, because the pack tactics mean they're far more likely to hit, and they're far more likely to kill that first level party. Now, once you get a little bit higher, then the lack of hit points by the kobolds start mattering. Once you're up to like 3rd level parties. All right, so let's talk about difficulty rocking. If I go back to this, and let's say I want to make a 3rd level. Actually, let's take a second, because it's the math's easier. So for a 4-man party, I want, by my numbers, to use 1/2 CR monsters. As I can see that we can vary a little bit. We want to vary things, because it turns out perfect balance is boring. So always running 4 CR halves is not that fun. But if we were to add 1 more or 1 less than 4, that rocks the difficulty a little bit. So 3, 4, or 5 would make a good encounter. In other words, a D3 plus 2, right? Because I'm going a little bit below, a little bit above, but I'm still staying within that 2 to 6 range. That's how you can build your tables. Find a monster of the right CR, then rock it back and forth, one higher, one lower, and one right in the middle in the Goldilocks spot. That's pretty much all I wanted to talk about as far as this video. I do want to go ahead and talk a little bit about Flea Monsters. Flea Monsters, for those of you who play in 2024, is a good monster book. It has aside from these tables, it also has monsters at the power level of monsters of the multiverse, which means it will work with 2024 D&D. For those of you playing 2014, it will work as well, but they are a little more high-powered monsters. My only knock against it is that the monsters are complicated. They're harder to run. So a lot of times you're better off like using a monster manual monster and one of them, right? The other thing I will give it props for, they brought back minions. For those of you familiar with minions, they're little mook monsters that the guys can feel strong beating up the masses of monsters that don't overwhelm parties. In fact, minions are work very well against first level parties because first level parties, they break the action economy. The minions only have one attack as a group attack, so they don't outnumber them in attacks. And players, even first level PCs, can kill more than one minions in one blow sometimes. So that's the good of it. The other thing I wanted to talk about quickly is that another system that works fine is Angry GM's Monsters by Tier. I use that system. The problem is it doesn't use CRs. It uses what is the level of the party, and then you basically build a monster that's supposed to be 1 for 1 or 2 for 1 or a boss. But it's a good system. That with Matt Colville's Flea Monsters took me up to a 20th level campaign. I went a 1 to 20 in 2014, and they work very well. All right, that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. I'll see you in the next.